Hey everybody, this is Doug with Liberty Disaster Relief, Fellowship of the Martyrs, coming to you again from the basement of one of the ministry houses. There's Sydney. It's about 1 o'clock at night. We couldn't sleep, got up to have a little snack, and got to talking, and I got real motivated to do this video. I know that um, I promised I'd do the head covering video, but I'm going to put you off another pass here. Because I got a fire in my belly to do this, and I want to try and get it on video while I'm motivated. I want to update you on the situation with Alecia and James that were fighting for custody of her 2-year-old daughter, Fiona, out here in Virginia. Some of you may know. Anyway, she's a real sweet young lady in mid-20s, came out here to visit, had been watching the videos, looking for fellowship, wanting to get in a deeper relationship with God, decided to move out here, and her mother, who she was living with, the grandmother of Noni, took her to court and said she was not a good mother, that she was impulsive, that all this stuff, that she was joining a cult, and that custody should go to the grandmother of Fiona. Anyway, we helped some folks send some money. Thank you very much. You know who you are. Ministry helped with a legal fund. She had a legal defense attorney, and then we helped her hire somebody that was going to maybe fight a little harder for her. Anyway, they reached a settlement out of court last week, where basically the thing was spiked from the beginning. Mom's a paralegal. She's pushing the whole thing in through her own court system. Knows everybody. Hired a big gun, tough lawyer. The guardian ad litem that's assigned to be the lawyer for the kid had already decided that Alecia was not a good mother and was joining the cult before he ever even talked to her. So there was a lot of propagandizing happening all through the process. Mom subpoenaed her phone records, her Skype records, her journals, her personal journals about her growth in the Lord and everything else. And they went through them with a fine-tooth comb, looking for hearing voices and whatever, and just picking them all apart. They forced her to go to a psychiatrist and a psychologist, I'm not sure which, and get a bunch of testing done, and 3 or 4 times she had to go meet with this psychologist. Meantime, Mom didn't have to do anything, even though she's the one that's out of control, over the top controlling, and most of her kids all try to get away from her as fast as they can, unfortunately. Anyway, where it all stood was James and Alecia are coming back to Liberty. They're supposed to get their own apartment. They can't live with the ministry. They're supposed to, she's going to have a job transferred here. Her company, she works with a nursing home care company, and they have a outlet, whatever, franchise division here. And so she's transferring here. We'll have that job already. She's worked with them for a number of years. Stable. They love her. She's great. Anyway, so they're supposed to get here, get their own place, show that they're stable, show that they have a place prepared for her, that the kid can be in daycare and whatever, with minimal help from the ministry. And then in 6 months, they'll go back before the judge, and the guardian ad litem will root for them and try to get the kid to her. Although we're concerned that the lawyer for the mother pushed for the 6 months, because it may be that in Virginia the 6-month limit is when they don't want to displace the kid. If the kid's been there for 6 months, let's just leave the kid where she is and leave her with the mother rather than upsetting the apple cart. So if she does everything perfect, gets counseling, takes medication if the counselor tells her to, goes to visit out in Virginia every other month, and on the opposite month, Mom's supposed to come here with the kid. They're supposed to Skype every day. Anyway, if everything goes perfect and mom doesn't come up with some new reason why the kid's incompetent and she should keep the grandkid, maybe at the end of 6 months she'll get her kid back. I am very proud of them, the two of them, because they weathered through this. They spoke a lot of truth to a lot of grown-ups that didn't want to hear it. And they believe God, that God is bigger than the court, and that kid, Fiona, is not going to be 1 second away from her mother longer than God wants it to be. And I think God is going to judge harshly the people that picked on his little one. I'll give you that Alecia is a little bit on the naive side, but she has a sweetness and an innocence and a beautiful spirit that people should recognize, without any hint of harm ever happening to the kid, without a history of drugs, without a history of psych meds, without anything. They just took this kid away from her mother. Because of slander and gossip and false accusations, and because of screwed up test results on the psychological surveys that the psychologist gave to Alecia, that said that she was paranoid and that she thought people were out to get her. While you're going to court against your mother, who you're living with, who is suing you for the custody of your kids, lying about your friends, calling you incompetent and impulsive, but you're paranoid. You're making this up, right? Well, my specific issue right at this moment, I said to Cindy, if I had the time and the world wasn't coming to an end, I would write a book for psychologists and psychiatrists about why they should not apply inventories and testing on people of faith and expect it to be valid. And I am absolutely convinced. Absolutely convinced. First of all, most of the surveys that they give to people during custody battles are to find out which dysfunction they have, are to establish that they are somehow mentally ill and what kind of mentally ill they are. They are not to find healthy people. And they are not, as with everything, your blood pressure, they say, 120 over 80. Well, if you're 122, there are people that will want to start medicating. And really, the normal range is much wider, much larger than a specific point on the spectrum. And there are lots of people that are fearful, that are depressed, that are annoying, that are paranoid, that are whatever, and still have their kids and don't have their kids taken away. And the idea that somehow they have to hit that point on the spectrum that's perfect, or you're not entitled to kids, is entirely unconstitutional and I think malpractice. Not to mention that when you are a person of extreme faith, an atheistic secular psychologist may automatically believe you need treatment and that you need to be medicated because they can't get their head around it. But we are supposed to be tried by a jury of our peers. And I believe if Alecia had pushed for a jury trial, which would have cost tons of money and drug out farther, and I don't believe the Lord wanted that. But if you were going to push this little wing right there that won't lay down, if you were going to push for a jury trial, then I would want 12 people that see the world the way I see the world. Okay, now, that might mean 12 African Americans if I'm African American. That might mean 12 members of ISIS if I'm a member of ISIS. But the, the way the psychological tests work, they take a whole bank of questions, give them to a group of people. Within that group of people, they know this subsection has already been diagnosed schizophrenic with this other test. This one has already been diagnosed depressive or whatever with this other test. So with this bank of questions, certain questions result in pointing to a high correlation to a probability to that group. Then they make a new inventory, maybe with fewer questions that can be given quicker, but it points to this particular group that we've already diagnosed that answered the question a certain way. Okay, but they're Americans, for one thing, and by and large, they're not people of real faith. By and large, they're secular folks that see the world a certain way. If you gave the same test to some quiet, demure, geisha kind of Japanese little girl, young woman, she would probably come out fearful, agoraphobic, scared of crowds, unable to stand up for herself, too quickly submitting to whoever tells her what to do or whatever. And yet culturally, she's perfectly fine. She can raise kids. She can be a good mom. But she is operating within the kind of culture that she grew up in, where you don't look your elders in the eye and you obey. And, they have created tons of really great worker bees in Japan that go to work, say yes to the boss, work themselves to death, and sleep in a little coffin at night because that's all they can afford. And they're training lemmings, and yet those folks are not going to answer questions on a questionnaire the same way as the sample that you use of Americans is going to answer a questionnaire. So there are racial differences, there are economic differences, and there are faith, religious differences. We are the fellowship of the martyrs. Okay, we are trying to raise up people that will absolutely believe what the Bible says to the letter and live it. That will follow Christ no matter what. That hear God and obey Him. Now, we believe God's real. We believe God talks to people. If you have me fill out a survey, I'm going to ask the Lord how to answer the questions. And He's going to tell me. And you're not even going to get anything resembling what I might actually believe. You're not even going to get a personality type on me. And you're not going to get a personality type on Him. I have no idea why He would have me answer the questions this way or that way. Fundamentally, Romans chapter 12, that's in the Bible, in the New Testament, the book of Romans, chapter 12, verses 1 and 2 says, "Be not conformed to the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." Okay, that means don't think the way the world thinks. Think the way God thinks. And if God tells you to take your family and go to India and feed the poor, you do that. And if a court says, but they're better off with the rich grandparents, with the heated swimming pool, with a good school, and they could be in danger to go to India. Okay, courts can do that. Courts probably do that all the time. For a long time, up until probably the 1850s or 1900s, missionaries went to the mission field without their kids. They left them home, put them in boarding school, and went to serve God and left the kids at home, especially in England. I think it was mostly the American missionaries where we started taking families with us. I grew up on the mission field in Mexico. At 7 years old, my mom, okay, the Mexicans don't let foreigners go to their public school. Yeah, But anyway, so uh, uh, me and three girls from another missionary family had a tutor that was sent by the mission board. So we were essentially homeschooled by this tutor. And we lived in Oaxaca City, Oaxaca, out in the suburbs. And at 7 years old, I would walk a quarter of a mile down to the main highway, wave down a city bus, all different colors with fringe around it and everything, get on the city bus with a bunch of ladies with chickens and all kinds of stuff, pig under their arm, headed downtown. I would ride the bus about 20 minutes to the downtown Zocalo, to the square downtown, get off a block before that, walk 2 blocks to the tutor's house, do class, come back, get on the bus, ride home, get off the right stop, whatever. 7 years old. White as white can be, platinum blonde hair, southern Mexico. Okay. This is 1974, the height of 1975, height of the oil crisis, very anti-American feeling. Southern Mexico, lots of guerrilla warfare. The first week or so, Mom followed the bus in the car to make sure I'd get off the right stop and stuff. And then the rest of the year, I did my thing. Okay? There were times that the little old ladies that got on the bus were there all the time, riding with me. Hi, how you doing? I'm speaking Spanish. I've been in Mexico a year and a half. My Spanish is pretty good. As a kid, there were times guys in guerrilla warfare outfits with grenades and machine guns would flag down the bus and get on the bus looking for I don't know what, looking for Americans, looking for I don't know what. And the lady next to me would take her shawl and just kind of wrap it around me and cover me up. And they'd come down the bus and get off and whatever, and then she'd just sort of unwrap me. And okay, was that an angel? Was that God? I don't know. But I never had an incident, and there's no judge anywhere that would say my mom was smart for letting me do that. But we trust God, okay? Now Mexico's different. Now there's kidnappings and all kinds of stuff. I don't know. I don't know. You still gotta trust God. You still gotta believe. You still gotta know that He's got you where He wants you, and that it's gonna be okay. And just okay. I got an undergraduate degree in psych. My master's degree is heavily in counseling and statistics and MANOVAs and ANOVAs and quartiles and percentages and probabilities and all that kind of stuff too. We had to take for my degree in higher education administration. I'm telling you, the kind of testing that they do to figure out if a person's sane or not is based on a sample group that is going to give you a cultural bias, a racial bias, an economic bias, and a religious bias. And if somebody really trusts God and really doesn't conform to the world, they're going to test wacky because, yeah, they're swimming upstream. They're making decisions not the way the rest of the world makes decisions. And people are going to have to decide if that means they should automatically be lobotomized, medicated, and institutionalized, or whether constitutionally they still have a right to their kids and can chase happiness and freedom and life and liberty, even though they don't agree with you on stuff, even though they do think a little different than you. I'm real disappointed in this psychologist who had no basis whatsoever to think this kid wasn't safe, who could not bring herself to testify in court that this kid was going to be safe with Alecia because of test results that says that she's paranoid, while she's being sued by her mother to take away her kid because everybody thinks she's crazy and there's no basis in fact whatsoever for any of it. It's absolutely justifiable to think that the world is against you. Matthew 5 says you will be persecuted and hated. You will be lied about and slandered. And she has been. She was. It's exactly what Jesus said would happen. This is not a dysfunction. This is exactly what the Bible says will happen and does. Anyway, I don't know. I don't know that there's a solution. I don't know how to. I don't know how to find a jury like here. If I was on trial and I wanted to find 12 people who think like me, I'm not even sure where to get them in this county. I'm not sure there's even pastors that are believing God as far as I do. But at least people of faith should understand. You know, she fretted and grieved, prayed about the poor thing. The Lord said, "I got this. It doesn't matter what the terms are. It doesn't matter what they demand of you. I want you in liberty, and that kid will not be away from you 1 minute longer than I want. If I got to burn the house down, if I got to whatever, hit her with lightning, if I got to whatever, I'm scared for Grandma. Honestly, I'm scared for Grandma. She should not have done this, and God's watching, and there's going to be consequences, and she's not going to win anyway." So she fought it out, went through the process, did all the right stuff, and then when the decision was made, it's like, okay, let's go, pack it up, let's go. And they're like, well, you should be upset. Well, no, not when God said to do this, and I'm just going along with what God said. Well, aren't you going to miss your kid? Well, sure. And yeah, but it's a done deal. It's decided. You know, King David, got Bathsheba pregnant. Then the baby was real sick after it was born. And he wept and he sat in sackcloth and ashes and fasted and cried out to the Lord for the baby. And such passion that when the baby died, they were scared to tell him. Man, if he's like this when the baby's sick, what's he going to be like when he finds out the baby died? But they tell him. He washes off, has something to eat, it's okay. They're like, we don't understand. What's the deal? He said, while there was a chance to move God, I fasted and prayed and begged and pleaded, but once the Lord has made a decision, that's it. I'm good. Let's go. There's no point fighting him. There's no point questioning him once the decision's made. Well, that's the way they feel. And I'm proud of them for it. And I'm with them in faith and belief that God's going to win this. That the righteous win in court. It doesn't happen as fast as you think. Sometimes years and years and years. But the Bible says the righteous will be proven true. And I believe in this case they're righteous and they're doing the right thing. And all the people saying this is in the best interest of the kid. No, it's not in the best interest of the kid. Being with her mom was in the best interest of her kid. This is all, would never have gone to court. Nobody hot called her. Nobody called the hotline on her. There was no instance of any abuse. There was nothing. None of this would have ever been in court at all if Grandma had trusted that she had raised her daughter right and that this kid could handle herself. Instead, she's damaged relationship, brought animosity and suspicion and judgment and all this stuff into that relationship, and taking a kid away from her mother, what she ought to do, with no evidence, no nothing, just speculation, innuendo, little line out of her diary where she heard God or felt the Lord put his hand on her shoulder or whatever to try to make her look crazy. And if she had a jury trial with people of faith, she would have won. Hands down, would have won. I'm absolutely confident because anyone with some discernment would have seen that this was set up. Anyway, I doubt that there are psychologists and psychiatrists that are going to be watching this video, but you know how these tests are made. You know how they come about with these things, and you know there's bias built into it. You know it isn't going to actually tell you what everybody thinks because there are all kinds of people that don't fit in the way they process information, the way they answer questions, because of cultural, religious, racial, whatever biases you cannot use this stuff as a one-size-fits-all thing. And you're supposed to have the wisdom to see past whatever that is and see why do they feel paranoid. Oh, maybe because they're going to court and their mom is trying to take their kid away. Maybe because the Bible says they're supposed to expect persecution. Maybe because they are really seeing persecution in their life and have been for a while. I am not paranoid that there are people against me. I am not making that up. I called this company that helps clean up your reputation online. And she said, well, let me give me your name and your website. Let me look it up and see. Normally we charge $3,000 or $4,000. So I give it to her. She's like, oh. She's like, yeah, I'm going to need to transfer you to our boutique legal department. We're talking mid-six figures here to clean up your reputation. Yeah. So I'm like, no, I'm not going to spend $250,000 trying to pull all this stuff off the internet and clean up my reputation. I'm grateful that I'm being persecuted. God, Jesus said it would be that way, and there's going to be treasure in heaven, and it is what it is. I'm not making it up. I'm not paranoid. I am being persecuted and lied about and slandered, just like Jesus said would happen. But if I took a psychological test and said, yes, I believe I'm being persecuted, some psychologists would say, easy, until you look at my life and say, wow, yeah, he's actually right. He's not kidding. He really is being persecuted. Anyway, continue to pray for Alecia and James. They're going to be heading back to Liberty here in the next day or so. And they're going to get an apartment, get set up somewhere nearby, and James will get back to work. And she'll get back to work doing her job, and I'll let you know how it goes. I don't expect it to last 6 months. I really don't. And but they're committed to doing what they said they would do and what they need to do to show the guardian ad litem that they're good parents and ready to take the kid. And maybe it will. Maybe it will play out to the 6 months. Maybe it won't last that long. But I know there's going to be attacks. I know there's going to be times that she's frustrated and wants to be with her kid and worn out, and tired of driving back and forth to Virginia every other month to see him and whatever. But continue to hold them up as they do a hard thing. It's crazy. We have service people, even a married couple where they're both in the military, and they go overseas for 6 or 8 months, a year at a time, serve on submarines and all kinds of stuff, leave their kids at home, and they're heroes. Even move their whole family to Germany or Korea or someplace that might even be under fire. And they're heroes. But you're a missionary, and you take your family someplace, some third world country, to serve the poor and care for people and be a medical missionary or dig wells or whatever, automatically you're a bad parent because you're stealing them away from the American dream and private schools and hoverboards and who knows what. It's crazy. I am blessed. I was blessed to have grown up in a third world country, to have not been a sucker for this false American dream thing. That I'm going to be happier if I can just get a boat and a good job and a house with a white picket fence. I mean, hot wife's okay. I got hot wife. That works all right. But anyway, man, I know that I'm swimming upstream, that I'm trying to get people that are in the world to think like me and not think like they do, and think like the world does, and that's practically impossible. I don't really expect them to hear me, but if you're out there and you're in a legal situation and they want to give you some kind of standardized test, man, I would really drag my heels. I would really do everything possible to avoid it. And seek a Christian counselor, seek a jury of my peers, seek somebody that thinks like you do, that's a person of faith. We had a young man call the other day. His family didn't want him to come out here, and they had him talking to some cult expert that wouldn't even acknowledge that Jesus came in the flesh, wouldn't acknowledge that Jesus. He's like, why am I talking to an unbeliever? Why are you taking advice from somebody that's not even religious, that doesn't even have faith? You know, how are they going to tell who's a cult and who's not? When they got no standard, they got no whatever, and they're just anti-religion. Anyway, uh, I don't know what good this does. If this touched you somehow and made some difference in your life, put it in the comments, would you? Because I think I'm just venting, and I don't mean to just vent. I want it to be something anointed that has an impact on people's lives. At the very least, I want you to keep praying for Alecia and James, and so there is that, updating on their situation, and stuff. So we'll get them on some videos, and we'll get them a chance to tell what they learned through the whole process, and some of their testimony when they get back. But if you have some similar story to tell, or um, some way that this video has impacted you, put it down in the comments, and let us know your take on this stuff. Oh, and if you happen to be a psychologist or a psychiatrist who has been swayed to my side of thinking, and please let me know that I made a difference in your career and your practice. But the vast majority of psychologists and psychiatrists have never met someone like me, have never met someone like us that is a real, true person of faith that doesn't think in any of the ways that they're used to. I cannot stress the difference. I cannot stress. I am not an American with a big screen TV and a recliner that goes to church a couple days a week and basically thinks like everybody else. I am so far from that. And people that I know, like Alecia, are so far from that, that the kind of testing of decision making and stuff that the world would say is reasonable, to me is completely unreasonable. I will put my family in danger. I will take them to a third world country. I will put myself in danger. I will fully trust God. I would say I think some of the military folks would test different than the standardized, whatever, American stuff. And they should. It's not unreasonable that they should, and we should make accommodation for that. Anyway. Thanks for listening. Appreciate you letting me vent. Let me know if it made a difference to you. And it's just going to get worse and worse. The world is going to get more and more against us. We're going to look more and more crazy in their eyes. It's just unavoidable as we go into the last days. And at some point, they'll justify just wiping us out. I mean, there's already atheists on YouTube that say we should be lobotomized, we should be institutionalized. Anyone that raises their kid with a Bible their kids should be taken away because they're abusing them. It's all out there already, and it's just going to get louder and louder until it becomes law. And anyway, there's already 50 or so countries you can't wear a cross on a shirt and walk out in public without being arrested. So take heart. You're not alone. And I thank God that I don't think like the world. I thank God that He did whatever He had to do with me so that I don't think like I used to all the time. God bless you all.